Is Man of Steel too dark? Let's analyze it. Welcome to Durbania. I'm Durbin, and this is my theological analysis for Man of Steel, the Darkening of Superman. I think what just gets me most about this film is how much it has just divided Superman fans right down the middle. I mean, I fall on the positive side of that divide, and I really enjoy this movie. I enjoy Clark Kent's journey because you have a dude who's in this world but not of it. And he's got all these extraordinary powers and abilities, and it's about his journey of where does he fit in this world? What is his identity and his role in this world? So I enjoyed that journey throughout this movie. But those who are on the negative side, I get every single one of their arguments because it's like it takes that fundamental character of Superman and it seems to darken him. Because honestly, when you look at the comics, Superman is who you aspire to be. That is who you aspire to be. Batman is who we are as we're working to be heroes and working on ourselves to get better, but Superman is the picture of the end goal. In Man of Steel, the end goal picture is not there because it has not yet been reached. So Superman is deeply flawed, deeply lost, and trying to find his way in this world, which makes him a bit more of a mopier Superman, a bit more of a darker Superman. And then, a lot of people don't like the whole destruction of the city and all that, and I get it, because we're comparing it to Superman 2, where, he tried to get people out of the way of debris, where he was mindful of the people in the city and things like that. So there's so many elements at play, and why people are sharply divided, and why they don't like Man of Steel, and why they do like Man of Steel, and why some see Man of Steel as a film that takes Superman's character and darkens it. Now, I don't think Man of Steel really darkens Superman's character, but that's because of a perspective I've chosen to watch this movie through. See, I think Zack Snyder really did a lot to put a messianic feel on Superman. And that's been something we try to do a lot with Superman, is give him that messianic feel. He's a messianic figure.
I guess I assumed after you ambushed me in my barn and accused me of being an alien Jesus that we had dropped any formalities.
And so after we've taken Superman and made him this alien Jesus, we then go through Man of Steel, and it feels kind of bipolar. And I think it feels bipolar because the Messiah is sinless. The Messiah knows his identity. And in Man of Steel, he doesn't know his identity, and he's deeply flawed, searching for his place in this world. The Messiah knows why he's here. Superman, at this point in Man of Steel, has no idea why he's here. And so when we try to throw that Messiah picture over top of Superman, that doesn't work for me. It gives it a very bipolar feel. It just doesn't mix. It's like oil and water. That whole feel does not mix for me. However, when you take Superman and you compare him to Moses, now there's something that works for me. I mean, Moses put in a basket, sent across the Nile, where he's raised by a new family. He shows up to save his people with signs and wonders. Kal-el, born on a planet under a death sentence, put in a ship, sent across the stars, raised by a new family, shows up to save the world with signs and wonders. And Moses is a hero of faith. Somebody that we look up to as an end goal. We're like, man, I'd love it to have my faith there. But Moses is just a man and was deeply flawed, looking for his place in this world. At one point, he was so flawed that he completely disobeyed God and therefore never got to enter the promised land at the end of his story. And so when we look at Superman and interpret him through that lens, instead of the Messiah lens, we go through the Moses lens, then we still have something we can build towards. We still have an in-hero goal that we can look towards, and there's room for him to be flawed. There's room for him to be lost, and there's room for him to not know his identity. Something very unique to this interpretation of Superman in Man of Steel is his overcoming of fear. And it's a very basic fear. It is that fear of rejection, fear that the world will be afraid of him and will reject him. How often do you and me keep our light hidden because we're afraid of rejection? We're afraid that our gifts aren't enough, that we don't have enough to offer the world, that when we step out, we'll be wrong or we'll be punished or the world's going to reject us anyway because we feel whatever. This is what Superman is dealing with. It's slightly different because he's afraid of how powerful he is and he's afraid of how the world will perceive that. But that fear is the same fear. He is afraid of how the world will perceive him. And what's interesting is when you take a look at Jonathan Kent, a lot of Superman's fears, a lot of Clark's fears come from Jonathan Kent. Now, Jonathan Kent, when you look at him throughout the history of Superman, you know, he's that whole guy, that whole encourager guy where he's like, hey, son, you're in this world, but not of it. You have a great calling and you have a great destiny. Now, Jonathan Kent in this does say things like this in this movie, like right here.
But you're not just anyone, Clark, and I have to believe that you were sent here for a reason.
So he's got a purpose, and he owes it to himself to figure out who sent him to Earth and what that purpose was. So Superman has a purpose, and Jonathan Kent is good at saying stuff like that, but you can see Jonathan Kent is battling fear, especially right here.
What was I supposed to do? Just let him die?
Maybe.
That line is incredibly painful because you can just feel his fear. I mean, you could see him fighting morally the way Clark is fighting morally. Yeah, Clark had the ability to save those kids, and it was right that he saved those kids when the bus went off the bridge. But what Jonathan is afraid of is something bigger, of the world finding out who he is. But I think it's because Jonathan is afraid. I mean, you got to think, Jonathan is probably a very good man, but a basic and a simple man. And now something not basic and not simple has entered his life. Not just having a child, but an alien child. An alien child with miraculous powers that he could never have fathomed. So you got to think that now he's wondering who he is. What is his place in the universe? That the moment that he saw that his son was an alien and he saw what his son was capable of, it rocked his world to the core. And in so many ways, you got to imagine that he's still recovering. In so many ways, he's still dealing with that fear of who am I in light of this? In light of this child, who am I in this whole infinite universe? You got to think he's still dealing with that fear. And in dealing with that fear, he says that to his son. Son, good or bad? When the world just finds out you exist, before you even do anything, just the knowledge of your existence will change everything. It'll change science, religion, the way we perceive ourselves. He goes down the list, and I'm thinking what he's going down the list of is how much that has impacted him on that personal level. So he's dealing with that fear. He's still a great father. He's still encouraging his son. He teaches his son to be responsible with his powers and abilities, how to deal with bullies, how to be a good man on this earth. He is a good father. But like all good fathers on this earth, he is deeply flawed. And that fear that he has on a conscious level and on a subconscious level, he's passing that along to his son. And his son is taking it in on a conscious level, and he's taking it in on a subconscious level. So he's afraid, Jonathan's afraid of what this is going to do to the world. He's afraid that his son is going to be rejected. He's afraid. Now Clark is afraid. What is this going to do to the world? And the world, they won't accept me, will they? They're going to reject me, aren't they? And so now he deals with this fear, and this fear keeps him from stepping out into the light. Now, when Clark meets Jor-el, this is a huge moment in the film. This is the Moses burning bush moment. This is the life-changing thing. When Moses encounters God there with the burning bush, he encounters his real father. He encounters his real origin, because God is the origin of all life. And so when he meets the infinite God and begins to discover who the infinite God really is, that God is patient and kind, that God loves Moses, that God loves his people and hears the cries of his people, that God is putting a good and honorable destiny on Moses' life, even though Moses feels too weak and too unworthy to accomplish it, God is saying, put that aside. You could do anything with me, and I'm putting that call on you. So Moses discovers who God is in a really basic way and begins to discover who he is. By discovering God, he discovers who he is and his place in the world. When Kal-el meets Jor-el for the first time, he discovers his true father. He discovers his origin, and discovering his origin, he discovers who he is. And in discovering who he is, he discovers the call that is on his life. Jor-el sent him to Earth not just to save his life, but to be a bridge between two peoples, between Earthlings and Kryptonians, to be a bridge between two worlds. But not just any bridge. This symbol is a symbol of hope. Yes, this S is the House of El crest, but it is a symbol that means hope. So this tells him what kind of call it is. He's a bridge of hope between two worlds. And meeting his father and meeting his origin, he discovers who he is he discovers his call. And that scene where he flies for the first time, it's almost symbolic to me. That the weights, the burdens that had been holding him down, that had been holding him back, are broken and they've fallen off, and now he can fly. I mean, this is the scene where we finally get to see Superman freaking smile in this movie. He is flying and he's having a good time because the weight is gone. But now we have to talk about a sad truth, and it's a sad truth we have to be prepared for, because there is the God of this world, Satan. So when we discover who we are in God, when we discover who we are in Christ, when we have that revelation and we overcome old fears, we overcome old burdens, we overcome those things that have held us back, and we feel like we can fly, there's an enemy that is right away going to test us. There's an enemy right away that wants to step in and bring the test and bring us back down. And this is exactly what happens to Clark. The moment he has that breakthrough and that revelation, the moment those burdens fall off his shoulders, Zod shows up. Now, this can be interpreted as a plot hole. Why in this flippin' earth did Superman not go to Jor-el the moment Zod showed up? Instead, he went to some random priest? And I say random because we, the audience, don't know who this dude is. Maybe this was like the Kent family priest. Maybe this is the parish that they attended. We don't know because the movie doesn't dive into that. So for all intents and purposes to us, this is just some random dude that Superman is going to talk to. So we're just going to deal with it like that. Instead of going to Jor-el first, who revealed his origin, who he is, and where he came from, and who could reveal to him the truth of this enemy and how to defeat this enemy, he doesn't go to Jor-el first. He goes to this random dude first. So I choose not to interpret that as a plot hole. I'm making a conscious choice to interpret that as smart writing, because it's human nature. It is human nature that we will come to God as a last resort rather than the first thing. We come to God and we find such revelation. We find such breakthrough. The moment trouble happens, we have to renew our minds, because it's like the Matrix, man. When Neo went from the old world into the new world, that's it. He was free. But his mind was still bound by the old world laws. So he couldn't freeze bullets yet because he had to unlearn what he had learned and learn the rules of where he lives now. Like, he had to renew his mind. And that's exactly what Superman needed to do, because he should have gone to Jor-el first. But the moment the test showed up, it prodded that old fear, and he went back to something familiar. Instead of running to Jor-el as his first result, in fear, in panic, he ran back to something familiar and went for this totally human advice. And because of that, we got the movie we got. If he went to Jor-el first, I'm sure he would have gone, oh, okay, turned on his ship, flown up into space, thrown it at Zod's ship like a missile, and they would have been sucked into the Phantom Zone. End of story. But because of the fear of his calling, because of the fear of how big this threat was that showed up, because of the fact he's never stepped out into the light before, he was afraid. Again, probably that fear of rejection, and it held him back. So rather than pressing forward, he stepped back. And going to Jor-el became the last resort instead of the first resort. In fact, it wasn't even him that talked to Jor-el. It was Lois Lane who got the information she needed from Jor-el. Now, instead of looking at that as bad writing, like I said, I'm going to choose to look at that as smart writing, as that is a true reflection of human nature. That is the way we act. We get the breakthrough, and then all of a sudden the test comes out where we could step out into the light and step out into that calling, and it's like, oh, okay, maybe I'm not ready for that, and then we step back. I mean, even Moses responded with fear that initial moment where God called, with so much fear, in fact, that God's like, fine, I'm going to send you your brother Aaron to help you out, but you're not going to miss this destiny. Does Man of Steel darken Superman? I feel like if you want to look at Superman as the Messiah in this film, yes, it definitely darkens Superman, and it definitely even sucks the hope out of the character. But if you look at this character more like a Moses character, then we're looking at a character who's flawed like you and me, who makes mistakes like you and me. But we can find hope in that because we're watching Superman. When he stumbles and fall, he just gets up and he keeps pressing onward. When he should have gone to Jor-el first and he didn't, and so this whole thing drug out, he didn't go bury his head in the sand somewhere. No, he kept up the good fight until he won. He just kept it going. And to me, that's incredibly inspirational because it's like Moses, dude. Like when God called Moses, Moses was like, dude, I have a stutter. I can't even talk. And God's like, I don't want you to miss this destiny. I'm with you in this. Like God wouldn't let Moses go. When Moses made mistakes, God was there for him. When Moses fell, God was there to lift him up. I think so many times we get so fearful because we think we come to God so much as our last resort, and it's like, well, he's just going to punish me. So, well, things are so bad. Let me just take my punishment, and then maybe things will turn around. No, God is not looking to punish us or smite us with lightning. He's looking to lift us up and make everything brand new in our lives. We don't have to be afraid to come to him first, and we don't have to be afraid if we're coming to him as a last resort, he's going to smite us. He loves us unconditionally. He forgives us unconditionally. And when we come to him, there's that hope that he's going to lift us up. Those things that have been impossible for us, nothing is impossible for him, and he's going to make those impossible things possible. So as we continue to come to him first and it begins to renew our minds, we'll be able to see that more and more clearly. So when I look at Superman and Man of Steel as more of a Moses character, I then see an imperfect person growing and stumbling and falling, but getting back up and keeping up the good fight and renewing their mind instead of going back to that old familiar fear thing, stepping more and more into the light and showing the world what they have to offer. What did you think of Man of Steel? Be sure to let me know in the comments. Are you looking forward to Aquaman coming out here in December? Do you think that's going to be an awesome movie? Let's talk about that and the DCU here in the comments. And while you're there, hit the subscribe button to become a Durbanian and hit the bell by the subscribe button. That way you're notified the very next time I drop a ranking video, theological analysis, movie review, or anything else I do here. I want to stop here on this Patreon thing and say thank you to all my patrons. You guys make what I do here possible. Thank you for your support of Durbania. It means a lot to me that you would support me, not just morally, but even financially. It's a YouTube channel, man. I love what I do. And the fact that you support me like this, it's just such an encouragement. If you would like to support Durbania, you could check out my Patreon page. The link is in my description. There's different levels of giving, and they each have different rewards. One level lets you pick any movie for me to review that I haven't already reviewed. Or, another level is pick a theological analysis. You pick the movie that you want me to dig deep into like this. So check that out. Patreon link in the description. Again, I just want to say thank you. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.